Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nikhil Parekh from Ahmedabad city in India. In this video, I shall be giving you a recitation of my poem that is titled They Were Still Alive, Tribute to America Part 3. This poem of mine is in my book that is titled Love vs. Terrorism Part 1, that has differently titled poems on anti-terror, peace, love, brotherhood. So, without wasting a further moment, let me commence upon the recitation of my poem that is titled They Were Still Alive, Tribute to America, Part 3. The bellows of smoke that rose in the air still had poignant traces of their breath. The bellows of smoke that rose in the air still had traces of their breath. The splinters of glass, shattered all around, still had profound stains of their blood. The gargantuan slabs of concrete, lying in disarray, still had brutally pulverized fragments of their valiant bones. The incoherently shaped mirrors poking out from the rubble. The incoherently shaped mirrors poking out from the rubble still had their terrorized reflections. The sordid bits of paper blended with stone still had embodiments of their last minute declarations. The disastrously squelched telephone pieces still had shrill recordings of their horrified and ghastly screams. The unconsumed cakes of food, the unconsumed cakes of food adhering to the severely distorted lifts still had vivacious traces of their saliva. The strands of metallic junk, the strands of metallic junk diffusing from the broken car seats still had the blurred photo of their beloved. The ripped apart fragments of curtain cloth wound limply around the gleaming iron nails still contained curled masses of their blood-soaked hair, the disdainfully beaten pieces of plaster engulfed in clouds of dust were still impregnated with scores of their shimmering teeth. The mud sprinkled for kilometers on the stretch was still moist with their river of agonized tears, with their river of agonized tears, which must have profusely oozed out from their cheeks. The mammoth-sized pillars which once held the building the mammoth-sized pillars which once held the building, one piece from beneath, were still flooded with bouquets of bruised flowers which they had been just rewarded for their achievements. The eagle which incessantly encircled the appalling sight still had their expensive chains of silver in its beak. The thoroughly dismantled upholstery buried several feet under the debris. The thoroughly dismantled upholstery buried several feet under the debris still contained compassionate traces of their warmth. Still contained compassionate traces of their warmth. The computer screens split apart into halves. The computer screens split apart into halves. Still displayed nostalgic images of their eyes. Still displayed the nostalgic images of their eyes. The majestic wall paintings, battered and bashed from all sides, still had animated marks of their caress. The revolving chairs, now an inconspicuous shadow of themselves, still had a fine conglomerate of chocolate powder, which they must be merrily munching a few minutes before, which they must be merrily munching a few seconds before. The colossal chimneys, which were now reduced to matchsticks. The colossal chimneys, which were now reduced to matchsticks, still had their countless dreams rampantly lingering around. Still had their dreams lingering around. And who says they were dead? For if not anybody, but it is my firm belief that they were living, as no matter how unprecedented was the tragedy, no matter how horrific their destiny had been, their hearts were palpitating louder than the outside world several feet below the rubble, with each beat louder than the other, and proclaiming that they were still breathing and alive. And who says they were dead? For if not anybody, but it is my firm belief that they were living, as no matter how unprecedented was the tragedy, no matter how horrific their destiny had been, their hearts were palpitating louder than the outside world, several feet below the rubble, with each beat louder than the other, and proclaiming that they were still breathing and alive. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. From the innermost dormitory of my soul, I wanted to thank you for your victoriously gorgeous patronization to my poetry.